There's a whole heap of problems when you're not the local side of a business. When you're dealing with a different culture, you're often dealing with what you might think is obvious might not actually be obvious. There's really two important days in work that I think you need to really be careful of. It's the day you arrive in the company and it's the day you leave.
Hi, and welcome back to the 7-Figure Business Podcast, where we share the stories of remarkable entrepreneurs and leaders who are building businesses with purpose and impact. I am your host, Linh Podetti. I'm an entrepreneur, founder, and proud member of EO, or we call it Entrepreneurs Organization, a global network of over 19,000 business founders dedicated to growth, learning, and connection. In this episode, I sit down with David Jackson, the dynamic CEO and principal of Avison, Vietnam and Cambodia, a leading real estate consulting firm. From his beginnings in London to building a thriving business in Southeast Asia, David shares his incredible journey of navigating new markets, embracing cultural diversity, and redefining leadership in a fast evolving economy. We talk about the power of empathy and kindness in leadership, the importance of understanding clients and culture, and how he's using his experience to mentor others and shape the next generation of leaders. David also opens up about his personal passions from writing and storytelling to future ambitions in film and television. Well, let's join me in welcoming David. Welcome to the show, David. So great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you, Lynn. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And how was your birthday? Happy 50th birthday to you.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, I feel another year around the sun, a little bit older, not maybe so much wiser, but it was a very nice birthday. Thank you for asking.
I'm glad. So anyway, today I would love to dive deep into your journey in business. But before we go into that story, let's talk a little bit about your current business. What does it do? Who do you serve? Want to know a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently the CEO and principal, which basically means that I own the business here in Vietnam and Cambodia. And I work for a company called Avison. Avison are headquartered in Toronto, and they basically in about 20 countries around the world now, but then they're in their expansion phase. So we're an international consulting firm that consults on real estate. And basically every aspect of real estate. So we work from, site identification to valuations to planning to development, design, property management. We basically do everything on the sort of construction process, but we're the paperwork guys. We're not the ones actually doing the construction. So, but we make sure that we talk to our clients and we give them a good vision and a good plan, to make sure that they are successful.
Yeah.
As long as the clients listen.
I'm sure they would with your authority and looking sharp like that. So what kind of problem do you solve? Like, as in when they come into you, are they looking to expand, build, is it usually for the business, or we'd love to understand the problem that they come to you for and then how do you solve it?
Yeah, so I mean, we're a business consultant, and so I think one of the problems that you have as a consultant, I'm not sure in every industry, is to work out what your client's actual reality, what they're looking for, might not necessarily be what they're asking. So I guess the first thing is to listen and to ask many questions and to make sure that we can understand what their requirement might be, even though they might not be able to articulate it that well. And so the first one is we just listen, make sure we know what they want. And then the next one is just to sort of make sure that we're planning stuff. Obviously, we're involved in a whole variety of projects and different industries, and we help connect people that might be of better knowledge to make sure that basically our clients have the best team to make this project as successful or the outcome what they require. And so that's basically, we arm them, I guess, with our property, our knowledge, for them to make the right decisions. So and we help speed up their success on their projects, to make them the outcome or the return on investment, what they want.
So you could explain a little bit about, like, would it be an individual with a lot of money trying to invest or trying to get into property, or is it like a shopping center or a company that's trying to build shopping centers or something and they need your help? Like, maybe it's all of that, but yeah, I'd love to understand some examples.
It is all of that, and I have to tell you, the most difficult ones are often shopping centres. So we work with a whole variety of people depending on their investment and what they're looking to get in terms of return. So for us, we work with high net worth individuals, up to sort of 20 million individually. We work with people just finding an apartment to rent as well. So normal sort of residential transactions. And then we work all the way up to the big funds, maybe $250,000, 250 million. We transacted on a deal that was 450 million a couple of years ago. So a whole variety of people, all with different demands and requirements. Obviously, if you're looking for individual, for a family, there's a whole different set of requirements. Maybe it's near a school or their monthly allowance or things like that. Whereas, if it's a big fund, they're looking at different kind of aspects of a project. So that's what I mean about finding out what the return is and what people want or how invested they are. Often when you're dealing with families, and people have their children there, they're a lot more emotional than, a big corporate organization. So I think just having a bit of empathy and understanding what your client's basically asking for, I guess that's the hardest thing.
Yeah. And do you serve clients that are in Vietnam, or what are the countries that you serve?
Yeah, so part of the Avison Young remit for me, it's like a lot of the real estate companies, they're sort of territory bound, even though that is changing because more business is even happening at the moment that is cross-border transactions. But yeah, we mainly focused on Vietnam, but we work with clients that are from all around the world. In fact, even if clients are signing from office space, often the decision is made overseas. And so you have to be able to communicate in different languages, in different cultures, across multiple countries to see what the requirements would be. If we're dealing with someone from Korea or Japan, they may be a bit more cautious than someone dealing with Europe or the States. And so you need to sort of tailor make your responses before that. And often I always say in clients to get to know them, you've got to really have a few meetings before you sort of engage in clients or know what they want. You've got to go on a few dates before you get married. You have to work out, what their requirements are and what the reporting's like. So there's lots of maybe cultural, misalignment that happens quite a lot. You have to be very empathetic for that. So yeah, but it's interesting. It keeps life interesting.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about the Vietnam market and I guess prediction in the future, because I hear that it's growing. It's going to be, I don't know, apparently someone just told me that in another 10, 20, 15 years, they're not going to be considered as a developing country anymore. So I guess what's your insight as someone living there?
Yeah, so just as a bit of background, so I'm obviously from London, but I've been working here for sort of, the best part of 18 years now. So I've seen Vietnam in various stages over the last 18 years. Obviously the world, has went through sort of some economic problems and then COVID and a few other things. They all impact, and, Vietnam wasn't immune to that. So it's still growing. But what it is doing is just the demographics are amazing. So, you have good or bad, but sort of 60% of the population are under 35. It's got half the population in golden age, which means they're working. It's got an urbanization rate of 36%, meaning changing to 50% in the next 5 years, meaning there are more people living in the city. And it's really benefiting from a youthful energy and entrepreneurship nature of the people here that, and it's going to benefit from technology. So rather than, digging up roads and putting in telephone lines, it's just going to go straight to satellite. And so I think, just looking at the numbers, I think it's the fourth fastest growing population in the world. It's right next door to China. It's got a massively high literacy rate and things like that. So I think it's only going to go one way, and the government is stabilized and structured, give or take a few periods of nomination and election. So I think the next 10 to 15 years, and the rumor is in some of the publications is that Vietnam's is the rising star of Southeast Asia, or the shining star. So I think it's all very positive. It has been a bumpy road. There's a few things that have gone on. But I just think you can't hold back the Vietnamese people. They're just so focused and innovative and adventurous. That I think it's the place to be for the next 10, 15 years, which is quite nice to say, I think.
Yeah, I'm so proud to be a Vietnamese and seeing the country rise. And that is why I've been there 2 times. This is my 3rd time next month. And I feel like I just want to go back there all the time because it has everything that I ever need and more in terms of the fun.
The fun's there. Also the food is there. The food's pretty good. So, so I have to say I'm not in a hurry to go back to the UK for sure. I think there's a lot of issues around the world, whether it be wars or political unrest or all the other kind of stuff. I think Vietnam is very focused on the future. So, I think it's good.
Wow, love it.
And I think where the economy is going is that to speed up the economy, Vietnam's mainly trade and exports and manufacturing, but I think they are pushing into real estate a lot more. Here's unusual because here's decree law. So it's the decree issued by the government and interpreted by the various ministries. It's not law of precedent or case history like you get in the UK or Australia. So it's all about interpretation and time. And so the government's really focusing on doing that and focusing on real estate to make sure that people are protected in their development. So I think the future's pretty bright.
Ah, love it. All right, well, let's go back into your childhood and understand a little bit about what made you decide, or one day I want to be an entrepreneur and then eventually get into real estate.
Wow, there are a lot of questions there. So, in terms of my childhood, born in London. My parents were from Scotland and my dad from Ireland. So a bit of a mix there to begin with. Which I think always leads to sort of entrepreneurship and other stuff. That's just the kind of way that you grow up in that type of household. For me, just jump forward a little bit. I got 2 degrees. I got one in applied biological sciences, which I did first. I really liked biology. I really liked knowing how your body works, how the plants work around you and what's around you. And then separately later, I've got another degree in surveying and real estate because, again, I want to know what's around me. I want to know how buildings have functioned and things like that. And then I used to play in a band. So again, music. So I think, and how people communicate and things. So I guess for me, just to wrap those 3 up, I like to know what is around me and how it works because I spend lots of time in it, in the environment. So I guess that's probably my passion for that kind of stuff, just seeing how things work. And because people are involved in it all the time, if you go people spend a lot of time in the office or in their house, or if it's outdoors, or if it's at a wedding, there's music and all these other kind of things. So I just want to know, I guess, what's around me and how that influences me or what I want to do. So that's the very short answer to that.
Yes,
yeah.
But what business did you get into? Was it straight away in real estate, or have you dabbled into other?
I've definitely dabbled, that's for sure. I think it's very unfortunate for people going to university now. You have to pick a degree that's going to relate to your job, but to know what you want to do when you're 23 or 17, I think it's quite difficult. But for me, I originally didn't really want to go to university. I used to own nightclubs and bars and think that was the way forward. But through, I'm glad I did go to university twice, more than most. Went to university, knew I wasn't going to be a biology teacher or work in a lab. And so, like the schools that I went to originally, you were going to be a lawyer, doctor, solicitor, banker. That was the outcome of those schools. So I ended up becoming a banker. I worked with Citibank for a couple of years, dealing in bearer bonds in corporate finance. And then later on, I did European branch proofing unit, which is basically after Nick Leeson ran off with a load of money, they decided they need people to check transactions in the bank. So if you got a call from me, there was a couple of days hard work to justify your trade or whatever. So anyway, I did banking. Unfortunately, I got a little bit ill. I got diagnosed with quite an illness, and I spent a bit of time in hospital, but it meant that they couldn't work out what it was. So I used my biology degree and I trained back as a pharmaceutical sales rep for Abbott. and worked out what was wrong and told the doctors. And then once that was okay again, I went into nightclubs and bars and ran my own business. So the long and short of what I'm saying is that the job that I do now is a sort of made up of all those past experiences. So for me, working in nightclubs, bars, you manage smaller businesses, cash flow, people, personnel, customers, engagement. In the banking, you know, I know how large organizations work, form, structure, finance, things like that. You know, I also did sort of pharmaceutical sales. So I learned about sales, how to close, methods of sales. And then now it's all kind of aligned together. So it did look like it was a bit of a weird journey, but I think it all settles in quite nicely now. And I've had a bit of training and everything, you know.
Yeah. I love that you were building on skills after skills, and then now you're accessing all of that skill set and experience in the current business. And it is where it is, and it's successful because, you know, all those years that you've been able to invest in your own learning. And what got you to Vietnam? Like, why did you end up having to move to Vietnam?
Yeah, well, it wasn't that I had to move to Vietnam. It was an active choice of mine. Basically, I had done it sort of a year traveling, you know, but back before it was called traveling, and sort of 98, and Vietnam just really opened up its borders, and it was really the first country in Asia that I spent a lot of time in. It was fascinating to me. The people were so kind, the food was so good. They wanted to chat, you know, they wanted to do loads of stuff, and I think it was always in the back of my mind. And I think once you make a journey or an adventure to get out of your comfort zone and do something new, then you realize it's not potentially as daunting as what it might be later, you know. And so I think once you experience that a little bit, there's always that bit in the back of the mind that thinks, well, I knew at the time what London and the UK had to offer. And I you know, so I thought, why not do something abroad? I didn't want to go from London to Hong Kong. My brother was based in Hong Kong at the time. I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to think, and I thought that I can make a difference here. You know, so yeah, that was it. I have to say though, when I did get out of Ton Suk Nya Airport and it was pouring with rain, and I had sold my business, broken up with a girlfriend, rented out my apartment, in the UK, then I thought, wow, yeah, this might not have been an easy decision, but I'm so glad I did, you know, and it's worked out okay.
Yeah. Well, looking back at your journey in business, and even living in Vietnam, I guess, what is a memorable challenge that you're like, oh, I remember that moment, you know, it was so challenging, but I got through it. Would love to hear an interesting story.
Well, look, I mean, you know, Lynn, where do I start with that? I think, you know, when you're coming from the UK, you know, and you're trying to set up a business and work on a business here, there is a whole load of things that you know, even after, you know, 18 years here, I'm still learning every day, because I think it's when you're dealing with a different culture, you're often dealing what you might think is obvious might not actually be obvious. You know, and, you know, what you're trying to strive for, you know, there are some people that don't want you to improve, you know, even in the work, you know, you can see this in terms of right now. You know, there is a problem with technology resistance. You got, you know, AI is changing the face of the planet, but that doesn't mean that everyone in your company wants AI to happen, right? So, you know, you're often, we're a success-based business as well. So often I meet with clients, I do a lot of the work, then I hand the clients over to my team to, you know, while I manage them to do the work. And some of them, you know, it's like you're giving them free money, but they don't want to deal with it, you know, and so it's very strange. So I think there is just a normal day-to-day, issues here that you, as a leader, you probably need to take regular time out to process, you know, and you need definitely you need a lot of stamina. You know, just because Vietnam is changing and evolving all the time, and what you think might be right yesterday is not right today. So you need to be adaptable. For me, we had lots of problems that come to mind. You know, I think the most, anybody telling you that, in 2019 that they were forecasting for 3 years of COVID globally shut down, and then for Vietnam, since then we've had 2 years of nominations and elections, and now we've got a sort of a Doge thing going on where they're amalgamating the districts and wards and things like that. It just doesn't stop, so you've got to make sure that you constantly get up, turn up and show up and do the stuff. Apart from that, we had a lot of changes. We had some issues with a business partner, but before 2015, you needed to have a local Vietnamese partner as part of the business. Now you don't. The law of enterprise has changed that. But, there's a whole heap of problems when you're not the local side of a business. In Asia is a relationship-based structure. There's lots of issues that come out with personnel and companies. We're a consultant, so often we work with companies. The most famous one at the moment is that we work with, or we used to work with, is Van Tint Phat, which is Madam Lan, who's currently residing in prison for 42 billion worth of fraud.
Yeah. Yes,
So,
I saw that.
Even your clients' issues sometimes become your issues. So lots of tricky stuff going on. But I think that's what makes business exciting, and that's what makes I think you can make a difference and guide people the right way. So but lots of problems.
So how do you live out each day to maintain that stamina? Do you have certain CEO habits that you follow that helps you to hustle on and stay positive?
Look, I think that's probably, if you speak to any person, you need to have a vision and you need to sort of program for that vision. I'm a slightly obsessional reader. So, I listen to podcasts. I listen to, books while I'm in the gym in the morning. I get up quite early, go to the gym. I do boxing as well. That helps relieve some anger, sometimes. Work-life balance is a really tricky thing, especially, like you said, Vietnam is all about sort of entertaining and relationships and clients. You need to make sure that you do spend a bit of time out. I guess the main thing is to help and to try and surround yourself by people that have your best interests and can guide you as well. I have a really good team around me now that help me to make sure that I don't start behaving weirdly, that keep me in check, and some good friends that are around me as well that are always there. But I have to say, it's not often there's a burden of management that is not easy to deal with. But I think all these things, you could read about getting up early, not picking your phone up, habit stacking. You could read about all this stuff, but in practice, I think it works for about a week, unless you're really sort of focused on it. To make sure that it comes in. But I'm aware, the more I read, the more I'm aware that I probably don't do.
Yeah, I love it. I would be able to share some tips on that when I launch my book. It's called The 360-Degree Success. And I talk a lot about habits. And one of them is quitting alcohol. I can actually stick to my habits.
So anyway, at the moment, after the 50th of my slightly croaky voice, I'm not drinking at the moment. So, not drinking. I think the issue is just to try and maximize your day. So I get up at sort of, 5 a.m. and I do an hour and a half just walking on the treadmill, watching the sun come up. Thinking about what I need to do for the remainder of the day. And I think splitting up the day a little bit. There's a book, Never Eat Lunch Alone. And I know that's one part of multiple parts in the book, but I don't agree with that. I think, there are certain times you need to sort of not be focused on business and recuperate and get your energy back. I think if you're always about business and sales, you kind of miss out on other parts of life. So, I think it is about habits, but ultimately for me, it's about the behavior and the character of somebody, because, I don't necessarily need to hire people because they're good in real estate, but if they've got a good character, or if they've got a good head and a good heart, if they're clever and they want to learn, then the other stuff will follow. Not necessarily the other way around. So I think you behavior and character is one thing, but habits is one thing, but you only get that if you've got good behavior and character. So,
yeah, I totally agree with you. So what does your typical CEO day look like nowadays? What is your, I guess, role as a CEO? How's it now compared to maybe a couple of years ago?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, it's changed quite a lot recently over the last year, in fact. The reason for that is just the nature of the market here in the business. So before you get promoted until you're in the Peter principle, you get promoted to your perceived level of incompetence. So, I guess somebody like me who likes sales, who likes meeting clients, you become good at it and you do a few deals and you get promoted. And then the next thing you know, you're actually not doing that job at all. You're doing a totally different job. You're sort of, and I think that's what's happened. I'm still client facing. I still work with a lot of clients, but because of the last 5 years, as I mentioned with, COVID and then government elections here, and then a restructuring of the government and the way it behaves, it means that people are unclear and you've got a sort of decision paralysis from the clients, or they don't know who to talk to. And as a result, the whole sort of the construction process as a whole is quite elongated. You need to buy the land. That takes time. Then you need to sort of plan what you're doing. Then you need to design it. And then so it takes a long time. And if you've got 3 years where everybody's not signing any papers, another 2 in elections where you don't know who to talk to, and then so it takes a long time. It's like a concertina effect of what we're dealing with in the industry at the moment. I still think it's good. It's improving, but it means that my job has come more onto, rather than client facing, like a marketing manager, has become sort of more like an accounting manager at the moment. And we're looking at staff costs, retention, performance, and making sure that we are lean and mean, and ready to go when the market sort of restructures. And so I've become a bit more like a headmaster now, and less more like a salesman, or a headmaster / accountant. So looking at making sure that we're okay in terms of cash flow, and making sure that people who work have got the right equipment to produce the right work and things like that. So it's changed quite a lot by nature. In addition to that, I guess at the moment, technology, I'm like studying all the time on AI and what to do with that, because it's going to change as a consultant to speed up the processes and time. If I don't lead from the front doing it, I think no one's going to embrace it. With, the whole culture needs to change with it. So I'm working with an AI consultant that's in the company that's advising my staff and trying to help them, because, if we're not on top of that, how can we advise our clients? And it is changing everything. So yeah, I think it's more now, a headmaster based structure, plus also just relearning and restructuring everything, because the production or the product life cycle of something is so short these days. You can't spend a couple of years learning some new code. You've got to do it within weeks, so yeah, it's very complicated.
Yeah. So talking about team culture, I would love to hear from your experience, I guess. What are some key learnings around building your team, and what were some challenges that you went through and you can kind of go, well, here are my learnings from that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the first one is just to be aware from me that I'm in a different country. I often give talks to senior executives and MBA students, and I'm always asking them what's Vietnam famous for? And, the first thing that people say is, sometimes it's food, sometimes it's the women, but generally it's they say it's the Vietnam War. And it's a trick question, because really I go, look, you're in Vietnam. So the first thing you got to know is they call it the American War here. So it's very different. So I think just understanding how things might be similar but different, is a good understanding, having some empathy. Vietnamese people are super lovely and nice, and they're really proud of their culture. So understanding that before you start opening your mouth and telling them what's going on, in accordance to your beliefs, and things like that. I think just understanding some local knowledge first would be my first call. I guess the other one, because I was in sales and I'm trained as a salesperson, I'm a big fan of the sort of analyzing people before they start work. So, often before you interview with me, you might do a Myers-Briggs, but more likely you'd do, which is a personality test, but more likely you would do a DISC profile with me. For that, if you don't know, DISC profile is by Professor Marsden in the, I think, 1920s in America, but it's your behavioral characteristics, what you would do innately, and it's split into a mix of, you ask set questions, but basically it determines how dominant you are, how social you are, how stable you are, and how compliant or sort of risk adverse you are. And it's a mixture of all those. And if you know their profile, so for example, if I was hiring somebody that's really dominant, that displays those characteristics, like, look, you got 2 minutes, tell me what you want, they're a dominant person. I would say to them, look, tell me when you're ready to work for me. Because it's appealing to their behavior. If it was somebody that was, a high C, which is the sort of conservative accountant, I'll say, look, tell me what information you need from me to make a decision. Tell me, do you want the track records? Do you want a history? What would you like? So you can frame the discussion on employment. And equally, if you know that, you can team structure. So somebody who's a high I, a salesman, they might not be very good at paperwork. So you'd match them off with somebody that was, so you can look at team dynamics and how they work together. So definitely we do that. Because I think a lot of people these days are very structured in the, half an hour interview process. So I think we apply a lot more to it and make it a little bit more difficult to work, because then the job's normally a little bit more sticky to them because they tried hard to get there. They'll try harder in the work. So just even before they've arrived, quite a bit.
Yeah, I really like that approach, because you're adapting different, I guess, coaching method or different treatment towards different people, so you can get, different results. If you apply this, do the same thing to the people with a different personality, you're not going to get the same reaction. I love that. How do you ensure your teammates get along with each other and also be able to be smart enough and do what you do? What are some challenges in terms of the team dynamics?
Yeah, look, I guess, so I mentioned it earlier. One of the things about Vietnam that's interesting and great is that sort of 60 to 65% are under 35, right? So actually, my job, you got to make the job interesting. You've got to make sure there's continued learning. You've got to make sure it's a fun place to be. Often I joke that I'm the CEO, which is not, it's the chief entertainment officer. You have to make sure that people have a good sort of Instagrammable moment and they're respected there in the company, or else they're going to move because they're young, right? So, and honestly, people spend a lot of time at work. So to make sure it's an enjoyable place to be, I think that's a good thing. But there's a lot of effort to do that, so just making sure that we talk regularly. For me, it's not that great for my work, but I always say my door is always open. People can come and, interrupt me anytime, pretty much. If I'm not, there's no shouting or screaming like some other nationalities might do in the office. It's a very calm environment to be, that people should be feeling safe, because if you don't listen to your staff and what they require, you're going to have a sort of disconnect, a sort of a vision drift, if you will. So, and so there's a whole load of stuff we've got, whether it's me or, my HR or my personal assistant, or we've got Dropbox, suggestion box, we've got notice boards, we've got everything to kind of make sure that communication is transparent as possible, in order to get talent retention. Otherwise, people are so young here. The amount of CVs that I get where people leave every 2 years, they sort of go for a job, they leave, they do something else, and they move from sales to marketing to family business and at the end of it, if they're lucky, they end up with this sort of connection like I had, but invariably they become a master of nothing. Because no one properly teaches them about meeting minutes or structures, or, they don't continue the learning. And the schools here learn a certain way, but maybe that's not similar to business. I think trying to make that a good place to be.
Yeah, you sound like a really good boss to work with, because you even have a title called the entertainment officer. They must really love that.
Yeah, well, that's a self-given title, but I hope so. I hope so. I think I hope so. I generally care about people and making sure they're okay, and I want people to be successful. I think anybody working in Asia regionally like I do, it's a relationship-based structure, so. You really got to make sure. Yeah, I think it's all about the relationship and making sure that things are okay with people, and they're looked after. I did say, I did talk to another CEO, sort of venting my frustration that people were leaving and going to the developers side, because we're a consultant and the developers pay more, but it's a singular project, so we're like a training ground. And he said to me, look, you shouldn't worry about it, because then you have a sort of an offspring or a child working, in somebody that's going to give you business. So I think always treating people, with respect. And for me, there's really two important days in work that I think you need to really be careful of. It's the day you arrive in the company, and it's the day you leave. And if you do both with grace, then I think it's okay. Because that's what people remember.
I love that. And who taught you that? What inspired you with that motto?
I don't know. I might have read it somewhere, but I don't know. But it just rang a bell with me. That's all.
Yeah. Well, talking about who influenced you, is there someone that you could share that really made a big impact in your journey as an entrepreneur? Whether it's someone real or it could be someone that you read from a book.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think there's people that influence you at different times during your life. I definitely have, last 18 years I've been with a business partner here, Mr. Peter Dinning. In fact, I call him Mr. Peter Dinning. We'll show you, even though he's a good friend of mine, we'll show you the respect. So there's definitely mentorships that happen ongoing. Obviously my parents sacrificed a lot to put me through education and things like that. So, always respectful of that. I got asked the same question the other day. I think for me, I tend to remember there's people that have been very kind and had spent their time on the journey. But equally, there were people that I don't want to call them a mentor, but they were not very nice on the journey, but I learned more lessons from it.
Yes.
So there are people that did some bad stuff, and then that really makes you question yourself more. I think people remember, you remember the time when you had a headache or a sore tooth and you'll do anything to fix it, rather than the time when you just woke up every day and it was normal. So, I think that there's them in terms of mentor wise, I think there's definitely a few people that came into my life maybe to possibly teach me a lesson rather than, but in a not a good way. And I remember those quite distinctly.
Yeah, I really love that perspective. Didn't see it that way, but it's so true because, I had a really bad leader, a bad boss that when I was, in uni doing a work experience, and she treated me so horrible that I think that's what has made me into really caring about people and don't want to mistreat them. So, it got me reflecting there. So talking about this, I guess, question here, how would you want people to remember you for? If I was to say, your eulogy, if someone was reading out that, what would you want them to say about David then?
Well, in terms of work, hopefully it's a good leader and not the chief entertainment officer, because I do a lot more than that. For me, what would be my legacy or something like, I think just time. I always give a lot of time for people. I think people need to be a bit kinder. It really, I think nowadays there's a sort of massive rise of many people who are self-important, have an ego and maybe narcissistic in that. And I think I would like people to think that I was a kind person, not kind with boundaries. They're kind with boundaries. You can't
Yes.
walk all over me.
Yes.
But yeah, a kind person.
Yeah, I always say don't confuse kindness with weakness.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Sometimes
some people have in the past, and that's maybe what taught me a few lessons. But kind with boundaries, I've learned.
Yeah. So what's next for you, David? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, great. So actually for me, I've been going through a bit of self-reflection, being 50, just turning 50. So there's a few things that I want to do, personally, in terms of my life. I want to sort of start writing a few books and things like that. I'm doing a lot of film and TV work at the moment with America and the States, which is quite interesting. I just think that's the way things are going. And that's a learning experience. Obviously, AI I'm working on, but work-wise, we are, as I said, we're just going through a restructuring of the company, and I think Vietnam is settling in. The government has just changed recently, so that's settling in, and I think by Q2 everything's going to start picking up very quickly, and so we're working now on M&A deals behind the scenes. We're doing due diligence with companies and organizations now on projects to transact later. So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of work. I don't want to say pro bono, but I'm doing a lot of work, just putting the groundwork for the future. And I'm very positive about that. So, I think next year is going to be an interesting year. It's a year of the horse. Next year it's changing to the year of the horse.
What do we need to know about the year of the horse? Because you mentioned
I don't fully know, but I hope it's going to be a good one. I think the horse is kind of stable and reliable year. It's not like some of the other more volatile years. So I don't know. I'll do a bit more homework and come back to you. But yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, David. Where do people connect with you?
Sure. Well, look, honestly, you can connect with me anywhere. Being part of a consultant it means that I'm not shy about what I'm using. So I'm on everything from WhatsApp, Viber, Messenger, LinkedIn, all of them and above. But really, you can get me at the avisonyoung.com website. That's or david.jackson at avisonyoung.com. Or just connect anywhere. And I'm sure if you type David Jackson Vietnam, you'll find me. I'm sure I've been here long enough. That's good. That's good and bad. You hopefully they see all the good stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, David, for your time today. I can definitely see that you're very kind because you even offered your WhatsApp number. So I won't be putting your number in there, but overall, find you on social media, and I'm sure if they connect with you, you'll eventually give them your WhatsApp. But
yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
Likewise, Lynn. You mentioned you're coming over here soon, so please drop me a WhatsApp. Let's connect further. And I just got to say, it's a real pleasure to spend some time with you. And so thanks very much for the time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. See you soon.